My story began in another big city, in New York, right before 9/11. I was actually working at JP Morgan at 60 Wall Street, and I was in the New York National Guard, and never thought that my first mobilization would be just a couple blocks away at Ground Zero. But that's what happened. And I had come from what was a military family. They wouldn't call them military families back then. My grandfather was drafted in World War II in the Bronx and served 3 years in the South Pacific. And then my father was drafted in 1968 during Vietnam. And back then, every family was a military family. So I didn't think much of it, and I wanted to serve. I wanted to give back. But I never thought that it would start downtown in Manhattan. But I found that my story is really not unique. Many people have answered this call. And what I'm going to talk about today is what I believe is a very big idea, and something that's appropriate for the Chicago Ideas Festival, the fact that this generation of veterans is not a charity, they're an investment. And I believe it's one of the strongest investments we can make at a critical time in American history. Before I do, I want to tell you a brief story via video of a young man named Nick Colgan who grew up not far from Chicago and is one of the many members of IAVA that has his own story to tell. If we could start that video, please.
I kind of took the hard road, and my story is not a story of success, it's a story of survival. My name's Nicholas Colgan. I deployed to Afghanistan with the 82nd Airborne from January 2007 to April 2008. It's hard coming home. Spending 15 months in war, it can transform you and really dramatically change your life. The military really trains you up, but what they don't train you to do is come back home and just be an American citizen. And so that's where groups like IAVA steps in. No, on my right shoulder I carry my best friend's name that was killed in Iraq, and he really transformed my life. I wouldn't have joined the Army if it wasn't for him. And on the same arm I'm going to get the IAVA logo, because just like Jeff transformed my life years ago, IAVA has transformed my life since I got out of the military. Literally, I could have been a statistic. I could have been one of the veterans that committed suicide. I could still be unemployed, and IAVA really did a lot for me.
Sure you want this?
Yeah.
All right.
It symbolizes everything that was great about the military and still carrying it forward. You don't always see it every day, but you see it inside the veterans that are becoming leaders in their communities. You see it inside the veterans that are becoming great husbands or wives, or you see it in the veterans that are out there and leading this nation and becoming the next greatest generation of veterans.
So that's Nick Colgan, and yes, that's a real tattoo. And in a great twist, the tattoo shop that Nick got that tattoo in was created by a Iraq vet who went to school and used his GI Bill money to get trained, and then started a small business that now does tattoos. And I think that both their stories just underscore the tremendous opportunity that exists in this dynamic, dedicated generation of young men and women. Nick is one of 2.4 million men and women who've served in Iraq and Afghanistan since 9/11. 2.4 million. Now, it seems like a large number, but they represent less than 0.5% of the overall population. In World War II, it was about 12%. So as the speakers earlier described, not everyone has someone in their household. Not everyone has someone in their classroom. But these folks are coming home, and they are facing some challenges. Not everyone comes home from war wounded, but everyone does come home changed. And some of them are stronger for it. They don't view themselves as victims. They're not villains. They are really a tremendous resource that are just waiting for this country to give them the opportunity to excel. 15% are women. At IAVA, about 30% of them are in school using the GI Bill, which has been a tremendous opportunity for them. Over 700,000 folks have utilized this new benefit and are now graduating. In Chicago, in LA, and across the country, they are graduating, and they want to continue to serve. That's something you hear from Nick, you hear from all the veterans, you'll hear from everyone on this stage. We want to continue to serve. And that's the opportunity that lays before us, but we do have some challenges. Over 40,000 have been wounded physically. Right now, nationally, officially, the unemployment rate for returning veterans is 12.1%. Let that sink in, 12.1%. That's just that we can track. We know underemployment is also another challenge. In states like Michigan, it's close to 20%. So these folks are coming home, and they need an opportunity. They don't need a handout. They do need an opportunity to continue to serve. Mental health is obviously another challenge that we have, but not everyone comes home with post-traumatic stress disorder. Roughly 1 in 3 folks do have post-traumatic stress disorder or depression, and they need our help. But they are folks that want to get involved as well and can contribute tremendously to our nation and to our local communities. And what they really need more than anything else is a connection. They need an on-ramp into the society when they come home. Whether it's at their college, at their National Guard unit, or at a company like JP Chase, they need an on-ramp back into their communities. And that's what we can do, but we can't do it alone. We know that the VA is facing some serious challenges. It doesn't get nearly enough attention. Right now, there are almost 1 million disability claims backlogged at the VA. Almost 1 million. So that means folks are waiting to find out if they're going to get care, waiting to find out if they're going to get payment, waiting to find out what's next. And that can be a tremendous burden on them. But these are all solvable problems. But the challenge to date has really been isolated to the veterans community. These conversations are critical because they're finally branching out. We're letting everyone know you don't have to be a veteran to support the new veterans movement. It doesn't matter who you voted for. It doesn't matter how you feel about the war. We can all come together around this one issue and be united and really ensuring that we don't repeat the mistakes of Vietnam. You know, it was interesting last week, there was a very high-profile debate on domestic policy. The 2 presidential candidates got together and tens of millions of Americans watched. There was a word you didn't hear in that entire debate: veterans. Veterans wasn't considered a domestic policy priority. That's got to change. In order for us to properly galvanize the country around this one issue, you all need to get involved. And it can't just be the government. The VA can't do it alone. They need nonprofit groups, they need private companies, and they need you to step up and invest in this generation of veterans. You know, a lot of folks tend to think that maybe they're just going to be robotic. I was an infantry guy, so I definitely had this stereotype coming home. And people assume, you know, walk straight, turn left, turn right. And they don't really appreciate the tremendous entrepreneurial streak that comes out of these folks. If you're on a remote outpost in Afghanistan with limited guidance and limited resources and tremendous pressure, you get entrepreneurial real fast. And that's what we're seeing. They are dedicated, and they do what we could say in the Army: adapt, improvise, and overcome. That's what you get when you hire a veteran. If you really want to support the troops, hire them. They are a tremendous galvanizing workforce that will not only serve themselves, but serve their communities. Nationwide, we've been working with different industries who understand and appreciate that. Earlier last week, we were in New York City for Advertising Week. The advertising community came together and understood that this was a tremendous resource for them to utilize. So they did a job fair. We were in Silicon Valley last week, where technology leaders are appreciating that these are the folks that are dynamic, that are entrepreneurial, that they want in their workforce. And that message is spreading fast. So when you leave here this week, you're going to see some incredible speakers that are coming up behind me. I want you to remember that we are not a charity. We are an investment that can go on to lead this country to do great things through tough times, just like every other generation of American veterans. George Washington once said, when we assume the soldier, we do not lay aside the citizen. That's what we believe. And we're not partisan. We are frustrated with the inaction and what looks like slow happenings in Washington and other places, but these are exactly the type of folks who can bust through those things and take our country to the next level. But we need your help. So when you leave today, when you leave this week, take this with you and think about Veterans Day, which is coming up. It's 11/11. And this city and every city around the country is going to have a Veterans Day parade and events for you to get involved in. Please step up and join that movement. Be a part of this movement and help us deliver a tremendous return from this generation. We are not a charity. We are an investment. And now's the time to invest. Thank you very much.